Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
All right, welcome to Meet the Author. My name is Joe Nash, your host. Today we're going to be speaking with Sister Anne Smollin. Okay, today we're talking with Sister Anne Smollin, author of many books. And Sister Anne was recently here in our library. Those watching probably saw your book review. We're going to talk about your books, but I just want to say one thing. You were here. We had our biggest crowd ever, and everyone seemed to know you. So I don't know. You must talk to a lot of groups.
I do. I speak all over the place. I'm always surprised that people still like to come, and it's like, how many times can you listen?
Well, anyway, before we talk about your books, I just want to mention you were the director for the Diocese of Albany, the office, the Counseling for Laity. I was wondering if you could just tell everyone what that office does and what you do there, and then we can go into your book. Basically,
it's a counseling center. It's an outpatient counseling center. We do individual, group, marriage, family counseling. It's a wonderful place. I have a great staff. It's basically an outpatient.
Can anyone go to this?
Oh, sure.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Now, you mentioned in your books, in all three of these that we're going to talk about, you really like working with adolescents.
I do.
Do you have a lot of teen counseling?
I love to work with the adolescent. There's something about it, Joe. Adolescents are so honest. Once they trust you, they're so honest, and there's no masks. You don't have to work hard to find out what's going on. They'll just tell you, and they really work hard on their issues. And really, it's a pretty hard time, and the culture we live in is pretty lonely. And there's a lot of problems kids are facing. So, that's my favorite group to work with.
Now, how do people? They just call the place up?
Yeah.
I mean, how is it? Are they referred there, or is
sure.
it?
No, I mean, people call and say, I would like some counseling, and they tell us what they would like. Sometimes, they want marriage counseling. Sometimes they want individual. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're dealing with a depression. Sometimes dealing with some family issues, whatever. And then I have a wonderful staff. So sometimes, there's somebody on the staff that can deal with an issue much better than I.
And you have several. You have a whole staff. Then you're
yeah,
saying.
sure. Yeah.
And then, so I think I read. You have a PhD in counseling? Or?
Counseling psychology,
okay.
yeah.
So we go from counseling, that's a perfect segue into humor. I was thinking if you do that all day, you must need. So I'm going to just mention the names of the titles of your books, and we'll probably show them on the screen. Okay. We have Tickle Your Soul, Live Well, Love Much, Laugh Often, God Knows You're Stressed, Simple Ways to Restore Your Balance, Live, Laugh, and Be Blessed, Finding Humor and Holiness in Everyday Moments. So I guess my first question is, since you're sort of known for speaking, giving workshops and lectures on humor internationally, what came from? I mean, how did the humor gig start? I guess I should say.
Humor really has started to come into the picture, and really, it's the most requested topic around the country at this point.
For speaking to groups.
Speaking to groups, motivational kinds of things. I do business, groups. Not just religious groups or whatever. I mean, you speak all over, and they always want something on humor and joy, and enjoying work, finding ways to enjoy the work force better, to interpersonally, how can we make things better, stuff. And so it really, I would say, it probably started around the early '90s, where you started to see people looking for something besides, negative stuff or just being preached at or whatever kind of thing. The other thing I want to say, though, is it's really important for all of us to remember that humor and joy and laughter is not cracking jokes all the time. And
well, I was going to say, these groups, they don't want you to come and perform. They want you to talk about using humor or in everyday life.
That's right, and finding it in the workplace, and it improves work. We have all kinds of studies right now, and that's another piece. It's a wonderful thing because we have so much research on it right now. There's so much focus put on positive stuff, optimism, stuff like that. And so what we're looking at is that the benefits health-wise for people. I mean, you know that when we laugh and when we find humor in a situation, you know, you feel better. Your body gets involved. I always tell people it's the only exercise I truly believe in, you know, because your body temperature goes up at least 1 degree, the glottis and the larynx begin to rock, it rumbles up along the windpipe, bang against the trachea, and it explodes out of your body at 70 miles an hour. So your whole body is interacting. Besides that, it interacts. It's an interaction kind of thing. And so what it does is it connects people. You know, humor's a wonderful connection, and it helps us relax. What it also does is it gives us hope. You know, it does. When you can laugh about something, or you can find a way to look at something and find a bit of humor in it, we don't hold on to the negative. We don't hold on to the anxiety and the stress of all of it. So whether it's in the workplace or whether it's in our interpersonal life, we know in marriage counseling, this is very interesting, the one single thing that the studies are telling us that really keep a relationship, a marriage relationship together, is the ability to be able to laugh together. You know?
Well, you mentioned in one of these, I'm not sure which one, particularly in a group and maybe like work, it sort of forms a bond between.
That's right. It bonds us together. It does. It bonds us together, Joe. And so, you know, you like to be there, you know. And I'm not saying be flip at work, you know.
Yeah.
But I think, and I've said this often, we no longer take coffee breaks. You know, we no longer stop for a couple seconds and just talk to each other or laugh together. And I think we need to do that. You know, we can't get lost with our computers. We can't just email people. We need to be able to be connected. And when people can just relax a little bit and share a funny story, you know, it brings a whole new relaxation into your body, but you go back to work and you get more done. That's what the studies are telling us. So there's benefits to it, tremendous benefits. Yeah.
So how did you start giving lectures on humor and workshops and all this?
You know,
I mean, did it?
I've been giving workshops and lectures on a lot of different topics over the years, you know, but I really think it probably started back. Again, I think I've tried to figure out when it did start too. The topic itself was probably in the. I started maybe the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s, when we started to look at. I mean, there are places in Saratoga. You have the Humor Project. There's a huge group out in California that does all kinds of research in relation to humor, and they have a conference every single year, and it's located in different kinds of places. So we started to be asked to present at those things, all right? And so then you start doing more and more research yourself, and you start using it, and you find stories, and you know, it just develops, because obviously to keep writing books and to keep talking, because people do keep coming back. You want new material, you know? So you have to keep on working at it, finding new ways of saying things and looking for the humor in the situation there. So I got started that way, but really, Joe, it's like, it amazes me. No matter what kind of group call, they say, now, you know, we need to be able to laugh. We need to relax. There's so much stress, so much tension here. You know, people are at each other's throat. Everybody's angry. I mean, they go on with all the stuff. And so it's a way to just, for maybe an hour, you know, bring into the business world a little bit of humor, but with some content. That's important, because it's not just flip.
Yes.
You know, you want people to look at, how can you find that? How can we be connected? What can we do so that we can find the benefits and really be able to use them?
Well, I would say the day you were here, because I thought a lot of people who work in the building came and saw you, and a lot of people that come to the library are regulars. It's like the whole rest of the day, our library, everyone was in a good mood.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. Good.
But so you started doing the lectures and workshops on humor. So how did the books come? Did people just say, you better start writing this down?
That's right. And you know, and I always say, I'm a lecturer. I'm really not a writer. I really am a lecturer. But what happened was, people would say, you've got to put this in print. I have to be able to do this again. I've got to read this over. I want something to hold on to, you know. So then I started to write on planes, to be honest with you, you know. And I thought, okay, what did I just say, you know? And I'd start to write it out, that kind of thing. And that's why the books are really quite practical. You know, they're not meant to be heavy. There is some research in them. I mean, I try to, you know, put real content in it, but it's not a theoretical thing. It's not heavy. I want people to be able to live the moment, find the joy in their own. Like the book we talked about when I was here, that's exactly what she did, you know. Ephraim just looked at what's happening in everyday life, and I think that's where we find the humor and find the joy. But I started to write because people made the request. You know, they needed something to read afterwards. They wanted to hold on to it. You know, I want to hear this again. I want to be able to read this over and over. It's been interesting because in writing the books, which I've enjoyed doing, to be honest with you, I get letters all over the place that they're using them for different things, using them for groups, using them in cancer groups to be able to bring some kind of relaxation, and different types of stress groups. One church group took Tickle Your Soul, and they used it as a Lenten thing. They decided that what they were going to do was maybe we'd use humor this Lent instead. So they put it in their bulletin, figuring that each time that they had groups, they always had maybe 6 or 8 people would be interested in the topic, and that would be the group. Well, this group told me that they said, anybody interested, show up Tuesday night or whatever night,
To talk about your book.
To talk, that's the book that they were going to use, and they were going to see how they could really and truly use it for Lent and et cetera. And 78 people showed up, so they didn't know what to do. So then they divided it in, and they decided to look at it scripturally. And they took each chapter and correlated it to a way to look at their own spiritual life. So I'm finding, and people are. One couple told me that what they do is they leave the book at the side of their bed, and every night they both get in and they take turns, and one will read one page, and then they talk about it, and they laugh and talk together, and it's improved their communication, it's improved their life, and so there are different ways that people are using the books, which touches me greatly.
Well, I would say the 3 books, they're a collection of little stories.
That's right.
And each chapter could stand alone. Each one's 2 or 3 pages.
That's right.
This one here, God Knows Your Stress, is kind of like, it's half your stories from your life. Oh, there's many about being on an airplane, I'll mention.
Yeah.
You talked about that. Yeah. But and there's some from other people. So they're kind of like, sort of like those chicken soup books in a way. I mean, in other words, there are all these little stories with an overall theme.
The God Knows You're Stressed one was a request from the publishing company. Okay. They called me because someone had, there was an editor who wanted to write 3 books. God Knows Your Stress, God Knows Your Body, God Knows Your Grieving, I think were the 3. And the publishing company told him he could write 1, and he could oversee the 3 of them. And that's why he put in other stories. Okay, so in reality, he edited all of them, and there's now a series of them.
Oh, so you didn't put those in?
I didn't put those stories in.
I got to tell you, this is kind of funny. I'm reading the book, and it starts off as your stories.
I know it.
And I think at the end of the stories by other people, the print is very tiny. Oh. And this has who wrote the story, where it's from. Yeah. And the first couple I read, I'm thinking, there's one about a guy running track. I'm thinking, and the person telling the story was afraid of this runner in high school. I'm thinking, Sister Anne ran track against guys?
No.
And then there's another about being married. I'm like, Sister Anne was married before? And then I realized, these are the other people's stories.
That's right. No, and it's because he really edited it, and he edited the stories, and he did that with all 3 books. So there was
so
a
this
thread.
is part of a series.
Yes, it was part of a series. But the other 2, and to be honest with you, I really prefer that I use my own stories. And there's so many things that happen in my own life that I can be able to use. I just. And if you can make fun of yourself, it's okay. Do you know? I never put anybody else down. I never try to use somebody else's story.
Well, no, a lot of the one when you're on the plane and you fell out the
I fell, yeah. Well, that
so half of these in here are your stories.
That's right, and God Knows Your Stress. But the other 2, Tickle Your Soul and Live, Laugh, and Be Blessed, are all mine.
Yours.
Yeah, right.
So how would you just, my sense of the books were they're kind of self-help, practical advice, little pep talks, humor. They're sort of spiritual. How do you sort of see them? So a little bit of
both, yeah, a little bit of all of those things. I really hope that they're practical books that really help us slow down and just find something in the moment. Help people relax a little bit. Help us find that there's some joy. Everyone has a lot on their plate. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety in the culture that we live in, And it's a way I hope that people can say, wait, that happened to me too, or yeah, that's true, what kind of thing. And so I want them to be practical. I want them to I hope they would speak to people of their everyday lives themselves, not just mine, but.
So you recommend not reading them straight through and a little.
Pick it up. Right. Pick it up and do it. Although people tell me that. People say, I didn't put it down. I finished the whole book. I just didn't do it. That's okay. But I also hear people say, you know what? I carry it around with me. Somebody told me they leave it in their car because the one thing that they have a lot of stress with is when they're stuck in traffic, and where they live, they said there's a lot of traffic stuff. So they leave it, and instead now of buying into the traffic and screaming and yelling and being angry and frustrated, they just read another page and then they can move on. And I said, fine, I don't care how they use it, as long as, it helps us be able to balance out our lives.
Are they on audio? That would be a good...
They're not, but we've had that request,
Oh, yeah.
and I wonder if maybe we might move that way. Sure. Yeah.
Well, one thing, and as I read the books, one word came up more than any other. Well, two words, but the singular and plural, the same word. But the one word that came up in all these books more than any other was the word story. Story and stories. So I was wondering, and these are sort of collections of stories,
That's right.
but you use the word stories in a lot of different contexts. So stories seem to be important in our lives.
Absolutely. And everyone wants to tell their story. I mean, I don't get to see much television. We were talking about that a few minutes ago. I don't get to see much television. But the stuff that's on, look at everybody's telling their stories, and people want to tell stories. But I think if we could also see that some of the stories that happen in everybody's life really have a little bit of humor and a little bit of joy that's right there. And then we grab onto that, and if we could hold on to that, it balances out when there's real frustrations or some very serious things to deal with, At times of sickness, we need to be able to relax a little bit. And so people tell their stories, and, you think about it. When families come together, we just finished a holiday. What do? They sit around, they tell old stories, That happens in my community. When all the sisters come together, honest to Pete, we're always telling old stories. And we're laughing, and we're having a good time, and whatever. It's in the stories that we feel connected to each other, but they're things that really give us a sense of belonging and a sense of connectedness to other people and reality. It even bases us in reality.
Well, that goes back to laughing together, too.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
yes, well, I'm from a pretty large family, too, so when we get together, it's,
Okay.
Like a laugh fest.
Okay, sure.
I notice, I guess, one aspect of your books is the sort of the spiritual aspect. Maybe we could talk about a little bit. When you mention God in these books, you're not mentioning God as some supernatural being. It's sort of more non-denominational. Is that sort of fair? You just sort of use the word in a pretty general sense. I was wondering...
See, I believe, obviously, I believe that really God is present always. And I believe that God is present right here as we interact, kind of thing. And so I think I would like to say this and mean, and put it in a context. We've done terrible things with religions. We've made them businesses. And so we don't always think about God being present. It's like, it's not that we have to go to a building or buy into a business to have that experience. And I think people experience God in many, many ways. There are people who tell me that they feel close to God when they're surrounded by nature, or they're with someone and they feel that real spiritual connection. God is always there. And so I also only believe there's one God. And so, however we look at God or however we define God, everybody defines God.
Well, you don't define it, and that's what I'm saying. You sort
no.
of use it in the
That's right.
general sense.
That's right. But I think people do define God in their own way. For some people, God is an experience. For some people, God is a prayer, and it's formal. And I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. I'm just saying everyone has their own experience and their own connection. And so but personally, I truly believe that there's not a moment that we're not surrounded by a God who takes care of us and looks down at us and smiles and makes sure that we're happy. And I also believe that in reality, people really need to look at the fact that we really are supposed to be healthy, happy people, And so I think humor plays a role in this, and I think God wants us to be, and I very often say, we're resurrection people, We don't need to stay stuck in crucifixion and be negative all the time. We can move to resurrection, And we can be joyful people and happy people. So.
Well, and what you say in relation to that, God or the sacred, there's three. I'll give three little quotes here, and maybe you could sort of comment on. You say in one book, laughter is almost sacred, humor is a grace, humor is a powerful sign that God exists. So. You sort of you're just saying you're connecting the and you also
I want to go to the word that you keep throwing out because it's important because that's what I believe. It's a connection. It's a connection, and whether it's a connection that we feel, a supernatural connection, if you want to use that kind of word, or we just have the experience of living that moment. The present moment is so important, and we don't know how to live that well, Joe, because we're always so busy. Everybody's running around; they got a million things to do, whatever. I mean, you just left as I came into this building. I came in the exit instead of the entrance, and so I broke your thing. That's all right. I mean, we might as well admit it and know that from now on nobody can leave the building. I guess I don't know because whatever. When I heard the crack, I went, "Holy Joseph, what happened?" Kind of thing. But even with that, if we could not be so, people get uptight and so tense that what they do is hold on. Oh, look what I did. Oh, and they do that, and they do it when they're driving. They look at that. Look what, and then we look at something, we get negative and all of that stuff. We lose that moment, and I believe it is a grace to find the joy in that moment, to find the energy, to really be able to do that, and that connection is there. And I believe we're connected to each other. I believe we're connected to our God. I believe we're connected to the present moment. We're connected to our earth. We're not really separate, like everything is really affected. And I just believe that positive stuff helps us be grounded and rooted.
It's hard, like I say, like you're saying, we're all doing 20 things at once.
Absolutely.
All the time.
That's right.
No wonder you can't stop.
That's right.
But you also gave in your books, in connection with this, to me, one of the best definitions of prayer I've ever read. It said, they're not just words strung together in some invocation of something, but you just say simply, prayer simply means being aware of the presence of God and maybe in our response to that awareness. And prayer is an act of response or acknowledgement of the presence of the Spirit. So it's just being aware. It isn't even saying certain words.
That's right. That's right. And I truly believe that, and that's why I believe that living everyday moment grounds us in wholeness and holiness, whatever way we look. It's like living the moment fully, and that's a prayer, I think that we're prayerful as we look at nature, as I think it's prayerful as people talk to each other, and share stories. I love to go to Hawaii. I'm privileged to be invited there several times, and I won't tell you how many because it really is.
I know Hawaii's in these books. It seems like you've been there a few times.
25, but that's all right. But I love it because you know what they do. As soon as you get there, people say, "Let's talk story. Let's talk story." That's a phrase they use, and I love that because that's exactly what you do. You sit down, have a cup of coffee with somebody, share a story, and I believe that's a prayerful moment. It's a prayerful moment. Because anytime that connection is there, we're just living more fully. We're living and grabbing all the graces of that moment. And so I believe prayer is kind of like over us all the time. And it's not separate. It doesn't have to be this formal kind of thing.
Oh, geez, we're covering an awful lot here.
That's good. Good.
In your books, you have a lot of little stories and quotes. I'm going to just read a list, but I have one I want to ask you about because I thought this would be. You have quotes and little things from Confucius, the Quran, the Bible, Buddha, John Paul Sartre, Anne Frank, St. Paul, Mark Twain, Emerson, and on and on and on, Japanese proverbs. But I couldn't help but notice you had a couple by Eddie Cantor. I was like, how does he fit into all this?
Oh, obviously, what I do, I have this little book, and every time I hear a quote or see a quote that I want to do, I jot it down. But Eddie Cantor was just an entertainer, it doesn't matter. And I don't think, I never look at who really is the person as much as what the message is, the message is. And for some people, Yogi Berra, I mean, you don't have to go beyond that to be able to laugh a little bit, kind of thing. So it doesn't matter where we find the quotes, but sometimes people love a quote, they hold on to that. And they'll keep it in their mind, and it comes back to them. That's what you want, and that I think because they're short, they're small, and but they have a powerful message.
There's many by Mark Twain, who's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, sure.
But one thing that comes through in your books, in all three of them, it's not at all in capital letters, but it probably should be. But one message I get from them is, life is worth living.
That's right.
I mean, no matter, I know we all have terrible things happen, we're all, but because you do a lot of counseling and everything, and this is your message, life is worth living, I go, what do you think holds people back, I think, from really realizing that?
You know, we have become such a negative culture. We have become people hold on to past stuff. They hold on to old hurts, old angers, old disappointments, and don't really and truly let go of that and say, I don't have any power. You know, yesterday's gone. We can't change a thing we did. We can't take a word back we said. It's gone. There is no power in yesterday. And there's not really a lot of power in tomorrow either. We can hope for it, but none of us are truly assured of it. So what we have is now. I think what we've not learned to do well is to relax a little bit and enjoy now and recognize that there is some power. I can do something about now. I can't change yesterday. I can't do too much about tomorrow. But I can really decide who I want to be now. And I can live fully this moment. And I truly believe life is full. And it's a wonderful thing to live it fully, you know, because what we do is we bring all kinds of positive stuff into our own lives. We can enjoy it, and it should be enjoyed, you know. We don't have to only, and I realize, and you're right, people have a lot of stuff on their plates, you know. There's sicknesses, there's depressions people are dealing with, there are, you know, accidents, there's losses, there's divorce, there's, you know, all kinds of things. I mean, we could enumerate a list forever. But, you know, there are ways of working through these things, and there are ways of saying, how do I balance out my own life? What can I do to put some of these stress reducers in my life? What can I do to live fully this moment so that I'm not only buying into that negative? If people choose to be negative people, nobody wants to be around them, Joe. I mean, we have, and you know, that's an important piece, because we have to make a choice to be a happy person. And happiness is a choice. It really is, you know. And there are some people who choose not to be happy. We know that.
Well, in one of the books, I think there's a little thing about the guy, everyone's in a boat, and he starts boring a hole, and the water's coming through, and people are saying, hey, what are you doing? He goes, well, why do you care?
Yeah.
It's my seat.
Yeah, it's not bothering you. It doesn't have any effect on you. But you see, I think that's what we do affect each other. We have a tremendous effect on each other. You know, you can walk through Colonie Center and people are laughing, and you'll find yourself smiling, even though you don't know what the heck they're laughing at. You know, why? Because there's an energy that comes. You know, and so even with strangers, there's some type of influence or some type of connection. You know, we do. But I think as we look at our homes today, as we look at our relationships, you know, people who are in our life, we need to be able to enjoy them, to relax with them, to find that, you know, we have to laugh a little bit together. We have to find ways of just, you know, balancing out all of the stress in our lives. We can't always change some of the stress factors, but we certainly can put other things in our life to help that balance happen.
Well, these books are library books, so people can come to the library and check them out. Sure. Are your books, where can they get them? Are they, I'm sure they're all on Amazon?
Oh, sure they are.
All on Amazon?
Yep.
Local bookstores?
Yep.
Borders, Barnes & Noble, the Book House?
They tell me that, yep. I know they're at the Book House. I often do book signings there,
okay.
yeah.
And they're all, you have more than 3. I mean,
there's only 3 in print now.
Okay, these are the only ones.
They're the only ones in print, right.
Okay, I have these. We have many reserves on them already. I got to get them back.
Good.
So they can,
Good.
And I just want to thank you for coming. You know, you were talking about the day you were here before. We had 100 people in the room. It was a lot of positive energy. So hopefully everyone can now watch and maybe they've learned a little more about you. But it seems like they all knew you. So anyway, really thank you for being here.
Thank you, Joe.
Really
it's been a pleasure. Thank
Okay,
you. It's been a
thanks.
pleasure. I appreciate it. Thanks. Good.